Well, we're very happy to have with us from his office in Indianapolis, State Attorney General Todd Rokita. And thank you for taking time to join us.
Hey, you bet. Great to be on. I guess this is my first time, believe it or not.
It is, yes.
We'll see if I make a lasting impression or not.
see if you get a second invitation. That'll be the true sign. Yeah. So there's so many things that we, bunny trails that we could go off on here. But the first thing I want to talk about is the Trump verdict. That's monumental, isn't it? That's huge.
Yeah, I'll tell you, and not to brag, it's not like I'm a Kreskin or anything, but on a couple national TV cable shows, I had predicted, I think it was 3 times total, in the months leading up to the decision, I predicted a 9-0 decision. And really, it came down to common sense. You see, it was, I helped lead with West Virginia. We shared the burden, a 27-state coalition that wrote what we call an amicus brief, or a friend of the court brief, in the Trump case. Of course, we caught a lot of hell over it because the left thought I was using your official taxpayer resources to help a political candidate, when it wasn't really that. We were helping, in those 27 states, we were helping our voters not have their choices diluted by the actions of one or a couple states. And that's what the case was about. It was the Colorado Supreme Court, in a very partisan, hackish manner, deciding on its own that President Trump committed insurrection, and therefore he was ineligible for office according to the 14th Amendment of our federal Constitution. So we argued vigorously and effectively against that, because when you think about it, Johnny, there's only 2 offices in this entire country that all of us as citizens over the age of 18 get to vote on, and that's president and vice president. So if you have a secretary of state like the one in Maine, a goofy judge like the one in Illinois, or this hackish Supreme Court in Colorado, that affects the Hoosier voter in terms of our choices and dilutes that power. So anyway, we won, and we won 9-0. And the reason I called it early is we could be in 9-0. That's a very rare thing to have the Supreme Court decide something 9-0.
Very rare, yeah.
Is because it really, when you read the 14th Amendment, it just if you believe in the plain meaning of the Constitution, like conservatives do, if you believe that the Constitution is not a living document to fit your own means, but to be read more broadly, then it's very, very clear that, number one, the determination of insurrection, if not in a criminal court where the federal statute's used, in the terms of the Constitution, and Trump was never convicted of anything, insurrection is a political process. And 2, even though every case just about I fight on behalf of Hoosiers is against the federal government, against federal overreach. I shouldn't say every, but just about. We have a lot of federal overreach with Biden. There are some issues and some things that Congress is meant to solve, and not the states. And this idea of these 2 offices, president, vice president, and who gets to serve in them, or who's eligible to run for them, is unquestionably, under the Constitution, a federal and specifically a congressional decision to make. Sorry for the very long answer, but this is a podcast.
Interested. Yeah. And it's so monumental to have that 9-0, because I can't think of, off the top of my head, any 9-0 decisions from the Supreme Court.
Right.
So
what a statement. What a statement about the haters and the left out there. And they weren't trying to be political. They were just reading the Constitution, like I said. But what a smack in the face. And these leftists still, so now they say, oh, it's the Trump Supreme Court. He only appointed 3 of them.
Right.
And he didn't appoint Sotomayor and Kagan and blah, blah, that we've had on there for a while. Not by anyone conservative. So it's just grasping for straws at this point. And what they can't get done at the ballot box, the left tries to do by other sneaky means, using the arms of government. Not dissimilar to what's happening to me by leftists in front of the disciplinary commission, But that's another podcast.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to do in having a chance to talk to you, I think most people don't understand what it is that the Attorney General does, right?
Yeah. Fair.
And so, you jump in. You get involved in these legal situations that impact the people of the state of Indiana, and you also have the job of protecting or defending the laws that are passed by our state legislature.
Yeah, that's right. Think of it this way. Just like an individual will have an attorney from time to time. If you think of the state of Indiana as one individual, one big individual, right? A client. I'm the attorney for the state. So that takes a couple different forms. That means I'm the attorney for the officers, the statewide elected officials of the state. And if they get sued, I'm the attorney for the state's agencies. If they get sued, I'm the attorney, like you say, for the General Assembly. When they pass a law and someone deems it unconstitutional, I will defend the state law in court. I'm even the attorney for the prosecutors, the county prosecutors. Now you say, okay, well, that's a county office. That's not a state office. Not really. The prosecutors are part of the state. It's the state versus an individual when there's a criminal allegation made. So they're actually arms of the state, and I defend them and their decisions and take up appeals or defend against appeals at the appellate court level for them. It's a big office. We're, depending on how you look at it, we're the state's largest law firm, really. Over 200 attorneys, 400 people total. At any given time, I have 20,000 cases going on in different forms or fashion. Some of those, by the way, I forgot to say, I can't represent you, Johnny, individually, but if you've been the victim of a consumer fraud or a consumer scam, there is help that I give you, especially if it happens to a bunch of people, so many so that the people of the state, and it doesn't be every person, but enough people of the state, right? Enough people of the client are affected, then it becomes a state action. We call that parens pari on that. So, and we go into court in that respect. So you think about TikTok. That's how I went into court on TikTok. You think about the constitutionality of Indiana's pro-life law. There I was representing the state legislature.
Right.
Sometimes I'll represent our good Secretary of State, Diego Morales, when the left wants to attack our election laws or something that he did as the chief election officer. So it takes all these different forms, Johnny, and this is probably the best and longest explanation I've ever been able to give on my office. So thank you for not falling asleep on me.
And the thing is that you, just by virtue of the office that you hold, kind of become the lightning rod for a lot of criticism, critiquing, and a lot of bashing from the left side. Yeah.
I just gave you a few TikTok and the Trump efforts that we gave. I mean, they hated it. We drive them crazy. Here's another one, though. And this, to be honest with you, and this goes to the kind of attorney general I pledge to be when we talk about education issues. We have a secretary of education that's appointed by the governor. The governor traditionally claims the area of education along with the General Assembly. But when I got here, Johnny, so much I felt was not being done. You see, in a prior life, back before I was in the private sector most recently, I was the kindergarten through 12th grade education chairman in the House of Representatives. Sir, I came in with Larry Bouchon. I served in the district just north of Evansville, of Larry's district. And was honored to serve there, just like it's even higher honor to serve now as Attorney General. But I bring that experience, that education experience, to the job. I'm not going to give that away. And so when I saw parents getting hauled out of school board meetings, I thought two things. Number one, it's wonderful to have parents involved in education, waking up finally and realizing what's being taught to their kids and marching down to the school board to find out what's going on and express their concerns. That is a good thing. And the next thing I saw was them getting hauled out. And I thought that's a terrible thing. So I created the Parents' Bill of Rights. It's now in its fourth volume. It's nearly 100 pages. It's question and answer format. It gives you your rights and responsibilities and your limitations, everything regarding your child's education, medical records, lesson plans, how to address the school board meeting, what your rights are to homeschool, what your rights are to choose your child's education regardless of zip code, all those things. A companion to that was the education portal. I started seeing parents turned into me because they had nowhere else to go. No one was listening to them, including whether it be the Department of Education or the governor. Lesson plans showing what was going on in their schools. And remember, Johnny, these were the people that were saying back a year or so ago, oh, that CRT or that social emotional learning, that doesn't happen here in Indiana. That's just out in Virginia. And those parents were out of line and nothing happens here. Now those same people, now that we've exposed what they do to our kids and teach our kids, we've exposed it on my website on an education portal that your listeners and viewers can submit to. Now they say, oh, we don't do that anymore. He's got old information up there. So we're basically exposing to the light of day these practices. Any teacher who's proud of their lesson plans should be proud to have it up on a website. And those that are complaining about it, I think they're the problem. Those that say that there's nothing to look at here, they're the issue. And so nothing's coming down. I don't care if it's outdated. We will put a response from the school up as well, because it's important that we don't let bad history repeat itself. And it's important to know what some of these school districts in Indiana are capable of.
And daylight is always the best disinfectant, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I know that you're short on time, but I just want to also get around to one of the. This has got to be kind of a feel good thing that you're doing, something that I'm sure that you take some pride in, and that is the new child ID kits.
Oh yeah, I think that's what we were scheduled to talk about. Thanks. So right here's an example of one. I don't know if that's blurry or not, but I'll zoom in and zoom out. And on the back has our partners. I'm grateful for all of them. So one of the things that we focus on here in the Attorney General's office is human trafficking. It's one of the main reasons Indiana was the first non-border state to sue Joe Biden for not enforcing the nation's border policies. We're lawless down there. It's quite clear to everyone now. I've been down there 3 times, but I just didn't do the photo op and walk away like some of these Congress folk do. Mm-hmm. We filed a lawsuit. We became the first non-border state in the nation to file a lawsuit against Biden because there's military age single males coming across the border. A lot of them let out of prisons. A lot of them bringing fentanyl, other drugs, little kids that they sex traffic. And then if they haven't brought little kids that they sex traffic, a lot of them are coming to Indiana and other states to sex traffic our kids. So this is a huge, huge issue. Our duty under human trafficking is to aid prosecutors when they ask. So we certainly do that. But just like in the education space, I don't want to sit around and do nothing else. So we've come out with these child ID kits real quick. Here's very low tech. You take these home. Every kid in K through 5 is going to get one through their school this year. We've secured funding for it. The parent puts down the vital information, and there's even a inkless pad that you can do your child. Now, wait a minute. Do your child's fingerprints and even lick a corner of the document so that you can get a good saliva DNA sample. I said, wait a minute, because I can already hear it through the microphone and speakers that some of your viewers and listeners are saying, I am never going to turn my child's information into the government. I don't care if it's Todd Rokita. I don't care who it is. It ain't happening. I completely, 100% agree. The parent keeps this. I need you to fill it out. I need you to stick it in your Bible. You stick it in your safe. You put it with your insurance contracts, whatever your most important documents are, the first documents that are going to come out in a fire, whatever it is, you keep this. And then if that horrible thing ever happens, where your child gets abducted, the first 48 hours of an abduction are the most important. And if you can give the cops, right, if you can give law enforcement a great lead in that first 48 hours, the chances of you saving your child and having them brought back to you go up exponentially. That's what this is for. We hope we never have to use one, but if that day comes, you just gave the police a huge head start.
Todd, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. I know you're busy, and we're just glad that you could spend a little bit of time with us here today.
Yeah, thank you, Johnny.
We're going to shift gears now, and you've heard me on this podcast before talking about the fact that that there were challenges to candidates for precinct committeemen and for delegates to the GOP convention. But what I've harped on the Republicans a lot about that. So now it's my turn to actually pick on the Democrats a little bit. And I kind of prefer that. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk to Michael Lockard. Michael is the lone Democrat to be challenged for candidacy for precinct committeeman.
Yep. And I got to admit, I felt somewhat lonely at the election board hearing, but at the same time, I kind of enjoyed being part of the process and being able to challenge, thinking that as a lifelong member of the Democratic Party, that I was a good candidate and that the primary should be that the voters decide who gets to go to the general. But unfortunately, that's not the way it went.
The atmosphere was weird. It kind of felt like the Inquisition.
Yeah.
And in fact, one of the employees of the election office actually said, "You can't be here."
Really?
And, yeah. And she was going to make me wait out in the hall with other people. I said, "No, you don't understand. I'm media." And she scoffed. She said, "You are not." and I said, I have a podcast, and I also do some writing for the City County Observer. I think that qualifies as media. Mm-hmm. And then went ahead about my business from there. But it was. But overall, it was kind of. I thought that people were being treated like the enemy.
Yeah, and it's interesting. The media designation is kind of like the Democrat/Republican designation. How exactly do you get those credentials?
Yeah.
Because anybody, especially nowadays, if you have a color printer, I can put my picture on it and put media on it. And, okay, who do you work for? I work for me. I'm a citizen journalist. That doesn't count. Really? Okay, so who do I actually have to go to get those credentials? And then they start stammering. And again, anybody should be able to report on the news, and they can. But it's the Democrat and Republican thing, going on here is that how do I prove that I've been a Democrat my whole life? How do we prove you've been a Republican? Well, we look at how you voted. Okay, the problem is I can vote in either primary at any time I want to.
Right.
So now, because I voted in 2 Republican primaries, I'm a Republican, even though I've always been a Democrat. And that's what really bugged me about, Mrs. Schultz saying, well, I don't think you're a good Democrat. I got to admit, I'm still somewhat annoyed at that one. Mm-hmm. Because she said, well, I've been involved for 5 years and I've never seen you. Well, ma'am, between 1980 and 2018, 40 some odd years, I've been involved in almost every major local Democratic candidate's, campaign. So because you don't know me, suddenly as the county chair, you get to say no? And that to me doesn't seem fair. It didn't seem fair, a couple of weeks ago, and it still doesn't seem fair.
Yeah, the law changed in Indiana about 3 years ago. The legislature, I guess somebody wanted to have more clarification on how to vet candidates. So the legislature came up with this law that basically stated that a candidate had to be a member in good standing of the party and have voted in the last 2 primaries that they voted in with the party that they want to run on. And that ever since that law passed, we've seen this rash of, for lack of a better term, kind of weaponizing that law. John Ross, of course, he was wanting to run for Senate, and was taken out of the running there. He challenged it in court. The first court said it's unconstitutional, and then it went to the state Supreme Court, and they said, I don't know exactly what they said, but it's all allowed to go on still. So we're just seeing this in this rash of it that has happened all around the state. We're not alone here. Everywhere in the state of Indiana. Last year in the mayor's race, that's a good example. They, the parties, for their own reasons, each challenged a candidate in the primary. In the case of on the Democrat side, I think that the party wanted to give Stephanie Terry a good, clean run without a challenge in the primary. Okay, I understand that. They'll never give that as a reason, but that's kind of probably the undertone to it. On the Republican side, they had two ladies running for the office, and the third person they didn't want to see in the race, and so they challenged that person, got them off the ballot. But both party heads have also signed waivers because that's a provision of the law. The head of the party for any county can sign a waiver that allows that candidate to run even though they haven't met that criteria of voting in the last two primaries for their party. And they've applied that unevenly is the best way to look at it.
There's a major lack of consistency, statewide, but, mainly my focus, obviously, and yours is, locally. And, the ability of the chair to just strike somebody off the ballot without any work whatsoever, to me, is just, it's not what we're supposed to be doing. And it really bugs me when they can do that without even speaking with the person they're challenging. Prior to the election board hearing, I actually called Ms. Schultz to, try to discuss this with her. I'd never heard from her up to then. And, speaking about the Rust case in Marion County, the Supreme Court really torpedoed everybody in the state to a certain extent by the way they did it, because the Marion County court that said it's unconstitutional was December 12th, if I remember right. So from December 12th through the hearing in February, the law was unconstitutional. They couldn't do this two primary thing. Well, then the Supreme Court had the hearing. So everybody thinking, well, okay, what's going to happen then? You had up until February 16th to file a challenge against somebody. The Supreme Court released their preliminary injunction that it was constitutional on the 15th. So anybody and everybody who would be covered under this, we had 22 hours to try to figure things out. Even though we'd spent 2.5 months totally legal according to Marion County, now suddenly 22 hours. And I know one of the challenges of two filed by Ms. Schultz against me was literally within that 24 to 36 hour period. So everybody was, let's throw it up in the air and see what happens. Mm-hmm. It just wasn't right.
And how much information as a person who decided to run for a precinct committee person, how much information about that process did you get from the party?
Zero. And that's one of the bad things is that when you go online to look at these forms and fill them out, there is the, quote, legal text of the form, but that's it. There's no handbook to say, oh, hey, look, here's what you have to do. It's all left up to, kind of your own interpretation. And one of the things I noticed just today was when I was reading what Mr. Rust filed after the Supreme Court decision was that even though the law was declared unconstitutional in 2023, they never updated the state form that we're required to file, what's called the CAN-2 form. Mm-hmm. So even though Marion County had said, you can't do this two primary thing, the state never changed the form. So to me, that creates kind of a legal quandary. Mm-hmm. And as I was mentioning to you the other day, it bugs me that Ms. Schultz was able to say, well, I don't think you're a loyal Democrat. I think you're a Republican. Well, if what it takes to be a loyal Democrat is as easy as I found out, donating $20, I would have done it before the hearing. Because when I look at the local Democratic Party's website, they have a thing on there where if you donate $20, you can get a card that literally says that you are a loyal Democratic supporter of the Vanderburgh County Democratic Party. And I just checked that out yesterday to make sure. So if you're going to contest whether or not I'm a loyal Democrat and all I got to do is donate $20, I'd have done it before filing, and it sure would have made that hearing a couple of weeks ago very interesting. Yeah. Because I think she'd have fell out of the chair at that point. It's my personal opinion.
Yeah, and that kind of leads me to the big question: is how difficult would it be for a party chairperson? And I know that that's a position that pays nothing and all of that. I understand that. So you're there as a volunteer. But so are the people who are coming to you wanting to run. Mm-hmm. They're volunteers. And in a lot of cases, it's their first foray into the world of politics. So then they get kind of kicked around by the system. How difficult would it be for the party chairperson to send a little letter, even if it's a form letter, as soon as a person's registered, to say, or as soon as they filed, right, just to say, hey, welcome. Mm-hmm. We're glad. Just a reminder, these are the rules. And maybe have brochures at the election office that say, here's what's required of you. I wouldn't have that big a problem with the whole idea then of the two primary rule, as long as it's evenly enforced. And up front, we say to people, this is what's required of you. So they get that information when they file, and then they get a nice letter from the county chair. But instead, the county chair people are, it's like the old days of the party boss, you know, and they want both of them made these statements about, why didn't you come to me? Well, how do I reach out to you?
Yeah,
is there a way to do that? And well, you could come to our breakfast. Wait a second. I looked on the website for both parties, and on the Republican side, there's nothing that even says that they ever get together for anything.
I think part of that is because too much of what happens locally, and not only locally but statewide, but websites are no longer the primary means of educating people, because unless you're a geek, I am, people don't know how to program those. And they're not as easy to keep, really up to date every second that it needs to be. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people have said, well, you know what? We're just going to put it all on Facebook. And that's fine. Don't get me wrong. But like you said, if somebody wants to find out, well, when's the next hearing of whoever? How do I find it? Well, do I go on Twitter? Do I go on Facebook? Do I go on the website? There are more places. And so the party, it's all volunteers, so it's difficult for them to keep everything up to date. Sure. And in my mind, a better way, and I'm going to be urging this, is that Indiana needs to do what a lot of states have done, which is you register for a party. You don't do it, well, you voted this way last year and that way the year before and this way the year before that. All right, so what are you? Nobody knows. So let's make it so that, it's 2024, it's a federal election year, and lots of elections. Why don't we make it so that somebody has to register, quote unquote, for a party by December 31st of the prior year? So if I want to run as X, I have to register as that. And in Indiana, there's a law that says only major parties get to run in the primary. Mm-hmm. You've noticed that, I'm sure, that if you're not a Democrat or a Republican, you don't get to participate in the primary. Now, you can be in the general, but you can't be in the primary. So why not make it so that we have to register for a party? And if you don't want to vote in the primary, register as independent. It's that easy. It's based upon what the last election was on who gets to vote in the primary. All right, well, 99% is always Democrat or Republican. Fine. Make it so that people have to register. It's not like it's a hardship for people.
Well, what we've done, we keep trying to make it easier for people to participate, because that whole thing of 20% of registered voters actually showing up in an election is absolutely ridiculous. And what we've been trying to do, it's nationwide, is we keep trying to make that an easier process, right? So more people go. The lesson that we've already learned is no matter how easy we make it, we're still only going to hit that 20 or 25% mark. And if we're only going to hit 20 or 25%, why not go back to making it a little bit more, so that there's more accountability to it and everything. In fact, I really want to I've got to get Diego Morales on here, our Secretary of State, because he's got some pretty strong opinions about this, and he talks about return to paper ballots and return to voting in your precinct, not at a voting center, because, counting the votes has not been any more efficient with voting centers. In fact, probably less efficient than what it has been, than what it was using paper ballots. So there are things we've done that we've kind of messed the system up in the process of trying to get people to participate in the system.
We're kind of spoiled in Vanderbilt County because our teams, going back many, many years, Vanderbilt County has always been, to a certain extent, a leader in getting the votes counted, getting them turned in, getting them posted, so people know what's going on. It's not that way with everybody, but it's really done good locally. And I think if the state would quit, trying to protect the assets of, well, this party's in power or that party's in power, let's figure out a way to do it so that it is fair. And when you look at the John Russ case, I did not realize that in terms of primary voting, Indiana ranks 50th out of 50. And that, at first I'm like, really? But then you look at Vanderbilt County, we have 160 some odd thousand people that, live in our county. Yet sometimes we're looking at 10% voting for a very important election. So 10% are making the decision, and the other 90, I guess, the rest don't. Well, you can read about it in the morning. And, that's the way they do to make things easier is not necessarily making things fairer, and I think a lot of people agree on that.
Yeah. There are a lot of things that need to happen with the election system to kind of fix it back, because I really do believe that there have been times that the election system was better off, had a higher participation level, even though you had to jump through a few hoops to participate, that none of that was insurmountable. And I think we've got to get something to happen.
And we have the age-old problem, and it's not just us, it's everybody, where the various parties that are at the state level, overseeing state elections, they're not going to do anything to shoot themselves in the foot and make it so, well, the other side could, that's the problem. And I got to admit, when I participated at the state level working on legislation, I was just amazed, and, being raised locally, amazed at how state laws get made. I don't even want to think about the federal level.
Yeah.
But started going up there and participating, and I've testified before the House and the Senate both. And what I didn't realize was, let's say one of our great legislators files a bill, and it's a really good bill. Do you know that if whoever or whatever committee it gets assigned to, if the person running that committee says, I don't like it, that bill will never see the light of day.
That's right.
And I'm like, and when I first figured that out, I think I was working with Senator Vanita Becker, and she was, telling me about this. I'm like, that does not make sense. So you're telling me I filed the best bill known to man, but if the chairman is the opposite party and he doesn't like my bill, it never gets voted on by the entire House or Senate?
Mm-hmm.
And when I tell people that, they're like, really?
Yeah.
So again, most people are used to local politics. You go to the state level, it's an eye-opening experience. I encourage everybody to do it, really.
All right. Well, I've had a great time talking to you today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It's great to talk about local politics.
Mm-hmm.
I think more people should, kind of pay more attention. And if they don't want to get involved, at least educate themselves on this is how it works, folks. Learn it.
Mm-hmm. There is so much going on behind the scenes that you don't know about. It'll scare you once you find out. This subject of the two-party or two primary rule, this is probably not going to go away because there are appeals going on the law, and there's been flat out lawyers, and I'm sure that our Vandenberg County election office isn't the only place where these words were uttered, which was, I want minutes of this meeting because they could come up with, in a court appeal and so on. So I think that this particular situation is going to continue to simmer.
Well, and you and I are proving the point, just like me being friends with Cheryl Musgrave, who I've known for 40 years. All right. You have historically voted Republican. Obviously, my whole discussion is I've been a Democrat my entire life. So we can sit down, have a discussion, and go over everything. And, there's no throwing of hands. More people need to realize that it's the issues that matter. It's what's getting done that's mattered, not, well, do you have an R behind your name or a D behind your name? Are you doing a good job? Then, you know what? If the local voting population thinks that you're going to do a good job, then you get an opportunity. Now, if you screw it up a couple years later, you're not going to be doing it anymore. To me, that's fair.
Very much so. Yeah. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, sir. Really appreciate it.
And be sure that you hit the like button, share this, make a comment in the comment section. And of course, as always, be sure that you subscribe so you don't miss a single edition of This Week in Evansville. Some great shows are coming up on the horizon. We're going to be talking to the 8th District congressional candidates. That's going to take about a year with how many candidates are running for that position. We're going to be talking to the gubernatorial candidates as well in the weeks to come. We have the mayor coming up in our next episode, so you don't want to miss out on that because Stephanie Terry, you want to hear how she feels she's done in the first 60 days and where she envisions things going in the years to come. So you don't want to miss out on it. Be sure to subscribe. And thanks for joining us for This Week in Evansville.